Oh well, it is perfect. Now we must have the people we want. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you again what I was saying earlier, and it is very simple, so follow me on this one. Here we have forearm muscles in different layers, because the forearm is going to be the main part of your whole arm and hand and like your whole extremity composition that is going to work for the tapping process, and also in the health issue is going to be the forearm. So in the first layer, that is the first image in the left, you can see there a red muscle. That red muscle is a muscle that is going from the humerus all the way to your wrist. This muscle is not involved in the tapping movement, but because of the tension that gets involved into the position you have your hand in, this is going to be a muscle that is going to hurt very often. This is going to hurt very often, but still you are going to be able to keep on tapping even though it's hurting. But when something is hurting, you have to alert yourself, because it is a lot of tension you're putting onto your arm. So if you have a tapper player that can keep on playing after having this amount of pain in the arm, is because that muscle is not the one involved in the tapping, but still is having problems. So you can still tap, but you have to worry because of the fact that it is hurting. So you have to be very, very careful with that. But still, I'm keeping it very basic, because this is something you can do. You can take your hand and, well, your left hand, place it in your right forearm and try to feel the lateral part of your forearm, and you can feel this muscle specifically. I'm going to try to show you. Look, this is my right arm. Of course, the camera is, if I flip it around. Yeah, I just got my camera up, so maybe you can hear me now. You can see me now. So look, this is my forearm, right? This muscle is going to be the one that is going to feel a lot of pain here, because of the tension you have got in the position you use for the tapping. So something that is very recommended is to, well, by me, because I've been experiencing this and testing different things, knowing the basics of the anatomy. And I've also seen a couple of tappers that are very good tappers and that play for a very long time in their streams. You have to preferably go with an extended arm and not with a mid-flexed arm when you're tapping. So that's why a lot of players extend both arms and get the controller in their knees, for example. The more extended you have your elbow, less tension you're going to have in that muscle, so it's going to hurt less after your session of training. So the first thing you have to keep in mind for your muscles not to hurt is extension of the elbow is going to be important. That's going to help you into reducing the pain. Okay, so that is like the main muscle that you're going to feel hurting. Also, you have that little blue muscle that hides behind the red one. That also tends to hurt sometimes, because of this same position, having the mid-flex arm, because of the same thing, because they are being exposed to a lot of tension in that little space that is the articular space where they both are going to be exposed to that mid-flexion. So have in mind, the better thing you can do is to keep them relaxed with a completely extended extremity. Completely extended elbow is going to help. The rest of the muscles you have in the other layers of the picture are all muscles connected to the fingers and the hand, because they are going to do the flexion of our fingers and of our wrist. These are not important in the tapping motion, but still they can suffer a little bit from that same stress because of the position. So when you tap, most of the players when tap, and this is what I was doing when I turned on the camera and the mic was off, tend to have this position for the hand is again a little bit of flexion in all the fingers, sometimes even the wrist if they do a little bit of flexion of the wrist, and this is going to give a lot of tension over those tendons connected to those muscles. So first of all, you can have so much tension from those tendons in the articular sections of your hand that the articulations are going to hurt. So that is a very important thing when you are tapping it, that you can, well, not consciously, you might end in a position where you completely flex, well, not completely, mid-flex your fingers, and that is going to affect a lot the pain you can feel afterwards, as well as the wrist. So some players like to rest the hand on the controller in a extended fashion, trying to, well, yes, it applies to Wiimote because Wiimote has a similar form, similar shape regarding the NES controller. So for example, you can see when Doc taps, he tends to rest a lot his hand on the controller in a extended position. That allows to give a little bit of stretching and relaxation to the joints that are being exposed to this tendon tension. So it's going to be something good to have in mind, to do a little bit of flexing of your hand too, because the tension is going to hurt. So be careful, because that is going to happen. That in that instance. So if you can tap with a completely extended hand, well, you can just keep it completely extended, but it's really hard. If you can start tapping with that positioning of completely extending your arm and your hand, well, go ahead, but it's going to be really hard, because that is a very uncomfortable position too. You can't have your arm completely extended and expect your controller to be there. So you might end up exposing your joints and your muscles to tension positions that you have to know how to overcome through this relaxation, and also knowing when to stop is really very important. So now, next image is going to show us that was the interior side of your forearm. Now the posterior side of the forearm is very interesting as well. Here we have it, because this is going to be the one that makes most of the job here. The muscles that extend your fingers are going to be the green one, and the little orange here. Those are going to be the main ones regarding tapping, but as we tend to tap with our index finger, and, well, for me with my thumb, the thumb implies also the use of a lateral muscle here, that is the extensor of the thumb. Here you can see it popping out, going to the thumb, and the green one is going to be the extensor of the whole fingers, and is going to be going also to the index finger. So this green muscle is going to be the one that is going to apply the most stress during tapping, because this one is the muscle that vibrates. So when you're tapping, you have to have in mind that this one is the muscle. So if it hurts in the posterior part, the back part of your forearm, well, you're in trouble, because you're not going to be able to keep on tapping. This one is going to mess up your tapping capability. So again, we have the palm looking up, so this forearm part is the anterior part, and we give it a whole twist. This is the back part, or the posterior part, including the elbow. Okay, this is going to be the one that's doing all the work for the tapping. So when you tap, you tend to have your wrist, first of all, rotated. So your posterior muscles are doing a complete spin, like throughout the whole hand. They have to go from the back, you spin it, and they now go to the front. Okay, so they are already like in an uncomfortable position to their natural position, which is this one, where they are relaxed. When you do this, they are already in an uncomfortable position. And when you're applying tapping with your finger, here you can see a little bit of tapping there with my index finger. Well, here you're going to have that extensor muscle that is going to do that tapping, and you can feel it, you can see it, you can even see how it changes from being relaxed to starting to act. You can see there, that is, I'm doing the tapping, and you can see the arm shows the muscles because they are working. Okay, those are going to be the muscles that are going to do the tapping motion, and if those hurt, you're not going to be able to tap, and it's going to be dangerous if you keep doing it because you're hurting them directly. So be careful with that. Okay, so if it hurts here in the anterior part, is quite normal. You can keep on tapping a little bit, but you have to be careful not to hurt yourself, because then the overall pain can be so much that you won't be able to continue. And if it hurts in the whole other side, in the back of your forearm, you have to worry because you are doing something wrong because of the position, because of the time you spend playing and tapping. That is going to be way too wrong for your forearm, and that is going to show you that you should definitely stop and change your grip, change whatever you need to change. But if it hurts there in the back, you have to be careful. Okay, so that is that for anatomy. There's nothing else we have to discuss there, because the forearm is the first and most important thing you have to address. Now, regarding grips, we have here an image of a NES controller. We're all familiar to our NES controller, right? Even if you use it or you don't use a NES controller, you're familiar to it because it's the main representative of the game we're playing, which is a NES Tetris. Okay, so we can see here a controller. Our controller is really simple. You can see we have just a D-pad and 2 buttons. That's all we have to use. The start button should not be used in the middle of a game, because if not, you can be called pause zone and stuff that you won't like. And the select will hide your next box. So obviously you don't need those. You don't need to consider those buttons in your grip. Okay. Now, you know that your tapping tends to be stronger or faster with your index finger, right? So the main idea is to get your index finger to go here in your D-pad. And the fact that your index finger of your right hand, if you're right-handed, has to go across the whole control, is going to make it hard to find a grip that feels comfortable. Every grip is going to feel uncomfortable, unless you're a dominant left-hander, where you might be able to tap really fast with your left hand and there's going to be no problem. So if that is your case, well, good for you. But most of the people are right-handed, and you have to do a couple of maneuvers to get your right hand here to this side. So what types of grips have I seen that have caught my attention? Well, here I have my NES controller, right? I have it flipped, so if I was to see my controller like this, I would have to place my right hand here to tap. So there is a very interesting grip that belongs to Hypertap, where he has to use like a board or a notebook or whatever he uses below his controller, and he places his hands like this to be able to tap with his right hand and spin with his left hand. That looks very uncomfortable, right? That looks uncomfortable, but in the end, almost every grip is going to look uncomfortable because it is hard to find something, unless it seems fitting from the start, like me with my Joseph Sully grip. Okay, so that is one grip, doing the right hand below first, the left hand over. You can get also Goofy Foot, but I don't like Goofy Foot because it feels like playing the game in a wrongful way. And also, if you play on emulator, well, you are not going to get a Goofy Foot. I'm going also to tell you how to use PS4 controllers to tap the way it did. Okay, so that is one grip, the Hypertap grip, crossing your hands, putting something below to be able to hold it and be able to lay your controller. I've also seen the Mark grip is a really interesting one because it avoids the uncomfortable position of both hands being crossed, and what it does is you get your right hand in your D-pad, and you're going to use your left hand to grab on your controller. You're actually grabbing your controller with your left hand to be able to support it like with your hand, so that you don't need a board or something below. He grabs it like this, and he's going to press the A and B buttons with his left thumb. Meanwhile, the right hand is going to go on the D-pad. That seemed a very comfortable grip if you are trying to search something that won't get you messed up with your hands or the position where the D-pad goes. This seemed like a very easy one. If you can start using this, it's going to work very good for your hand and your brain to be able to understand it first and develop it into something that is very useful for you. So this is one. Left hand grabs the controller, and with the thumb you are going to press A and B, and the right hand is going to press the buttons. And he also likes to place the controller in his knee to be able to manage his D-pad better, because if you keep it in one steady position, you're going to be able to tap faster, like you do with your mouse. When you have your mouse grabbed and just tap it in one same position, is easier than your controller is sleeping because you haven't got it like steady in its place. That is another grip. The famous vertical grip is also one of the most comfortable regarding your corporal position, because you're not getting to any troublesome position with your body that might be way too stressing and tension generating. So what people do with vertical grips is just hold literally your control vertically. You manage to get your left hand in the A and B buttons, right hand in your D-pad. The only issue with this one is that you have to teach your brain to be able to use down in this position. You have down as the left side and you have up as the right side, so you have to start using those commands differently to the common way it is used. And you also have to lay your controller in your leg for it to be able to hold them steady, so it is a little bit hard to get used to it, and it might slip a little bit. Also your controller might also start sliding a lot on your knee because you're not grabbing it in a firm way, because you have to get your fingers in the buttons. So I don't like it. It just has to get a lot of work, but it's the most popular because it gets your body in the least amount of tension, so you can actually use it in a pretty comfortable way. But again, it is not the most efficient way, but the best players use it, so you can try it out to see if it suits you. That is the main thing. And the one-hand grips are also pretty cool grips. I use the Joseph Saley. You can also find the Korean grip. They're basically the same. You're holding your controller like you're a DAS player, right? This is a normal control positioning you would use. Now, how would a Korean grip look like? Korean grip would look like you keep on your left hand controlling your DAS or your slow taps with that left thumb, and you would use your index finger to jump into the D-pad to tap over either the right arrow key or the left arrow key, and you will use your following two fingers and maybe even your pinky to manage to control the A and B buttons. That is really hard to do, mainly with the pinky having the least amount of strength. The best way to use it would be with the two middle fingers, but you need to have a big hand in order to be comfortable with this one, because you have to stretch a lot your fingers, and that might apply a bit of tension here and fingers might start hurting quite a little bit. So it is quite hard. What Korean does is he manages to get a lot of positionings with his left hand and also with slow taps. And when he needs to take a piece to the complete extremes of the board, then he jumps with this. But he cannot abandon the two buttons because sometimes you need to do like T-spins and a lot of spins to be able to perform better. So it is important for you to have it in mind that you have to use also A and B. So if you start practicing this grip, try to practice also spinning, because spinning is going to be the most difficult part in these grips, because you're going to use fingers that are not used to be used for gaming. Actually, you rarely use those fingers, so you have to be capable of doing that. And the other grip there is the Joseph Saley grip. That is the grip that I use. For me, it's the best grip because the fact that you have your left hand, your left thumb, dominating the D-pad as you were a DAS player can give you the chance of doing DAS. If you feel like your tap is off, or if your arm starts hurting, or whatever happens, you can do a little bit of support with your left hand. And also because the buttons, you can also have them very well controlled with your, for example, your index finger, the following finger. Each one has its own job, and they are both very independent fingers, since the index finger has a very individual extensor muscle, and the other three fingers have a common one. So these three fingers are controlled by one same muscle. This one is controlled by another one, and this one is controlled by another one. If you do the Korean grip, these two fingers or three fingers left are all controlled by the same muscle. That's why you cannot like bend or flex one finger without the others coming behind, because they are all being controlled by one same muscle, that is the common flexor. So if you want to tap the A and B buttons with these two alone, it's going to be harder, because sometimes trying to flip one is going to make the other one flip as well. So the Korean grip is harder because of that. Meanwhile, the Joseph Saley grip gives you individual jobs for each one of these fingers, and they can perform that job in an individual way that makes it way better to do spins, because you know that you're spinning one side or the other and not messing it around. The way you do the actual tapping with your right thumb into the D-pad looks uncomfortable, but it isn't, because unlike the Korean grip where you need to stretch your hand way too much and apply a lot of stress, this one is very natural. Your thumb is already fitting into the D-pad naturally, because that's the way it goes, that's the way the thumb goes, so there's no major tension there. And this way you can just tap with your thumb either way. At the same time, you can do the spins without any trouble, because all fingers are being used with different muscles, so that makes the jobs very individual for each one. Okay, so finally, I have a little bit of coughing pending. So finally, what you're going to get is a grip that is comfortable for you. For me, the Joseph Saley grip is very comfortable. I tend to also lay it a little bit in my leg, this way, like making it like stay in its place, supporting it with my inner thigh, so that I can grab with my left hand the controller, and well, practically this is my thigh. I take the controller, I place it here in my thigh, so that I can manage with my left hand, and my thigh is going to prevent the control from slipping or going anywhere, and meanwhile my other hand is going to be over, and I'm going to be hitting the thigh so that it doesn't move anywhere. and it tends to stay put in its place without going anywhere. So that is my personal grip, and that is the way I use it. And that is going to be about grips. When you're going to use a PlayStation 4 controller, you have to have in mind that all controllers are practically the same. They have the same basic buttons and commands. In the PS4 controller, you have extra buttons, and the distances between the D-pad and the buttons is going to be greater. So you have to have in mind some things I'm going to tell you to be able to do it in a comfortable way if you want to tap with your PlayStation 5 controller. So here it is, PlayStation 4 controller, excuse me. This controller, you can see here, it has a lot of space from the D-pad to the buttons. So the buttons you would like to use to rotate the pieces are going to be square and X, because they are the closer buttons to the D-pad. Don't use triangle or circle. Don't try to go for the options button. Don't try to go for the share button or any alternative button, because that will seem unnatural. And if you want to then shift to a NES, to your original NES, you're going to have trouble. So the best thing you can do is use B button. The left button is going to be square, and the A button, which is the right button, is going to be X, and the D-pad as it comes. Again, here you have to have in mind the grips and which one can be more comfortable for you. Again, I use the Joseph Saley grip, so I'm going to show you my PS4 controller. This is the PS4 controller I use. With this one I beat Lucas on my first match. I was tapping, I beat him with a sweep and I used it until I left the emulator for my own NES. So here I use the Joseph Saley grip. One more time. Left hand is going to be over the buttons on the left side, over the D-pad, and the right hand is going to come over. Okay, it's going to hug the whole controller. This controller is easier to grab for the tapping because you have this small legs to grab firmly your controller, so you don't have to do what I was doing with my leg. I would keep my controller steady with the thigh, but you can just grab it like this and put your other hand there above. First, you would prefer to again stretch your whole arm to avoid injuring yourself. So what I do is keep the controller down to be able to have a stretched forearm to avoid injuring my main muscles. So that is a good thing to have in mind. But overall, this is the grip I get. Here goes the thumb, which in a natural way is going to fit in the D-pad. And as there is a long way to go between the D-pad and the buttons, I tend to leave here as a reference the index finger to be able to manage the A and B buttons with the other two. I told you it's not the most efficient position, and it is still not the most efficient position because you can misflip due to using one of the fingers and messing it up with the other one because of the muscle functions, but still is the better way to go if you are going to start practicing Joseph Saley grip in your PS4 controller. Okay, if you try the Korean grip, it's going to be almost impossible to reach the D-pad and the two buttons, so you might have to turn the function for the pinky finger as well, and that is going to make it way harder for you to control it because pinky finger is very hard to control. The other grips we discussed, you can try the Mark grip, as you don't need to use the triggers and the top buttons. You can still grab with your left hand and grab the X and square buttons with your thumb and place your hand over the D-pad as you were doing it with the with the mic grip, that is going to be also a comfortable grip. If you want to go for it, you can try starting practicing that one. It's going to work as well. If you go with the higher end dude, the PS4 controller is going to give you a bit more space, but still you're going to feel uncomfortable grabbing it like this, so not recommended. The vertical grip is going to be a little bit harder because the both joysticks are going to be in the way when you try to fit your hands in a way that feels comfortable. So it's going to be a little bit messy. You can probably find a way that it fits for you, but it could be a little bit more complicated, and because of the same legs and the form of the controller, it will be harder to set the controller somewhere. You can try to fit it in your leg. It might slip as well, but you can try it out. But I would recommend most the Mark grip, which feels more comfortable, or the Joseph grip that feels more natural, as the position of the controller is meant to be used like this, and with the Joseph Celly grip you're just placing your hand over, nothing else to do. It's not like you're placing your own body in an uncomfortable position. That regarding the PS4 controller, the NES controller, and the grips. Okay, so let me see what else can I show you. I think okay, don't worry. Now I'm going to show you the actual gameplay and tell you in which parts of the game you should tap, okay? So I believe here the mic is still on, hope it is. And I'm going to turn on the thing, you know? Yeah. Okay, additional stuff you should have in mind for the health and comfy issues. So I use a sleeve, a sports sleeve, to cover my whole forearm, because your forearm is still going to have to do work, it's going to feel tension, so you need to warm it up to cool it down after playing. And also the sleeves are going to be compressing your muscles and allowing them to have more efficient and more healthy use. I also use my very own cream it is a hot cream that is going to relax the muscles after and before play, to be able to perform better and to be... Yes, the forearm is going to be the main part of the whole body that's going to have tension. If you have a bad posture, your back is going to have a lot of issues also. So try not to have bad posture, but you need to have also a healthy and very clean back posture. So try to be always with your back all stretched, with a useful position. It's like anything. If you have a bad posture, you're going to mess up your back. So if the back is stressed and tensioned, it's because you're holding bad posture. And your hand is going to have a tension in certain parts according to the grip you use. In the Joseph Celly grip, if you relax your hand eventually, that is going to damage really hard your muscles, because the wrist has less muscle supporting it than the actual finger. So if you vibrate the wrist like this, just the wrist, that is going to put a lot of pressure in your wrist, can hurt a lot. If you get your carpal tunnel involved, that may end up having a lot of trouble, because the tendons that go through the carpal tunnel might end up swollen, and that is going to make it really bad for you. So try to avoid using the wrist, because you're using muscles that are not meant to do that. Yeah, the hand itself has no issue whatsoever. This is going to be like just sticks that are going to poke the buttons. They are not doing anything. So the main tension they get is because of the position you're holding. If you tap with a position so stressed like this, it's going to affect a lot your joints. because that is going to hurt. When you keep this position like this, the whole tendons that come through the fingers are keeping the hand in such a position that it's going to hurt your joints. So avoid keeping this position for so long, and if you start feeling pain, try to relax. Stretch also, stretch your hand a lot, trying to move your joints in such a way that they can feel relaxed. Okay, so it's better to tap with your arm stretched and use your forearm, because that is going to allow you to do more efficient tapping and to be able to do it for a longer time without feeling tired. Okay, that is not going to give you tension in the thumb. Let me go back to the big picture. The thumb is not going to feel tension. This area is free of tension because there is no muscles here, just tendons. What might be object of tension is the short thumbs of the short muscles of the thumb, which come from here. We here have a couple of muscles that are going to allow us to do this movement with the thumb. Okay, so with the adjustive grip, if you have the same position like this, like very tense, very stressed position, that is going to hurt. That is going to hurt here mainly because of the position. So you have to also relax. Remember that you have a thumb, do a little bit of stretching and a little bit of movement to avoid that stress this area. But that is not going to be different to what happens with other fingers. There's going to be partial tension because you're not using these muscles, because you're not doing this movement at all when you are hypertapping. You don't need to do this. You're just placing your thumb as a stick that is going to poke. It's going to poke the button like this. You're not using the thumb at all. If I used thumb muscles, I would do this or any of these motions, but not. I'm using it as a stick, just poking the button, literally poking. And if you place it over the D-pad, what you're doing is just you're pushing the D-pad with your thumb. You're just doing this, pushing. You're pushing. You're not using the actual thumb. You're just pushing it. So the muscles you're using are the muscles in your forearm. That's why when you tap, your forearm is the one that is making all the job, both for the thumb or for the index finger. Because still, when you use the index finger, you're poking the controller. You're not using the finger at all. Okay? That makes the difference also in speed. When you vibrate using your forearm, it's going to make your taps way faster. Okay? So let's go back to the game scene. I'm going to show you how to use it. Oh, and I was talking about the hot cream, very important, before and after your sessions. It's going to allow you relax your forearm. I don't do it because, well, I'm going to tell you after I take a sip of water, because I'm getting a little bit dry throat. Okay, I don't do it because if I work out the muscle is going to suffer what we call hypertrophy. That is going to get bigger. It doesn't mean that it's going to get stronger. Well, with certain exercise, you can do exercises for it to be more conditioned to certain activities. But if you do exercise for your muscles in trying to get better tapping, you're not going to achieve it. You're not going to achieve a more fast tapping because your vibration depends not on the size or the, how do I call it, not specifically on the size or your muscle itself, but the innervation of the muscle, like the nerves that come in and give your muscle the information that it has to do a certain action. Your nerves are going to throw a a stimulus that comes repeatedly and in a very uniform way that is going to generate the vibration. The vibration, you don't do it almost like consciously, not so consciously, because you can calculate exactly how many times to vibrate. You just send a message that you want to vibrate, and the muscle is going to do it. So is the nervous system the one that's going to create this vibration for you? It's not the muscle itself. So if you try to work out the muscle, it is also very likely that you get bigger muscle, and that is probably going to make it harder for your arm to tap fast, because the bigger your muscle is, the more stimulus your nervous system has to get there to move it all. So it's going to ask more from the nervous system to work, and it's going to be harder for the arm to actually do an effective movement. That's why most of the good tappers or fast tappers are young and skinny. You can see Eric, you can see Doug, you can see even Trapzone or Joseph himself. They are not bulk persons, and that is sort of the benefit you get from not being bulk, that you can tap faster because your muscle is not going to be tired as much, and also the less muscle your nervous system has to make move, the more it can move it. It's like you trying to carry a bag full of full of apples, let's say. If you have a lot of apples there, well, it's going to be heavier. You have to be stronger to move it. But if you have less apples, or it weighs less, you can move it with less force or move it more. It's the same thing. Your nervous system can move better if it's smaller muscle. If it is bigger muscle, it's going to be harder for the nervous system to act. So it's not going to be as fast as you would expect. Okay. Well, that is for the forearm strength. Now, I was telling you about the cream. Very important. You need to have something to take care of your muscles if you are actively practicing your grips. For me, it is this cream. You can also do, very importantly, to do before and after therapy with heat and with cold. You can get, I don't know how it's called, but there is some bags that are made of, I forgot how is caucho called in English. But yeah, there's bags where you can fill them with hot water and use them as you're hot to be able to relax the muscles, and also place them in, I don't know, use ice, or bags filled with ice, or you can also use cold water in towels to try to apply a little bit of cold in your forearm, because in your forearm is where the whole job is done, not in your hand. Your hand is not doing anything. Your forearm. If your joints are hurting because of the positions, you can apply cold, mainly cold to the joints. They are going to alleviate all the pain and all the probable swelling that is going to happen if you have a bad grip. So cold in your fingers, in your joints, in your hands, is useful when you have pain. But mainly, you need to do cold and warm therapy for your forearm. It's going to work the best when taking care of your tapping arm. Okay. In case you're having a lot of pain, not precisely like a bad pain, but a pain that you recognize that it is because you have been doing it way too many times and you just need rest, and even though you're resting a couple of days, it is still hurting. You can actually use medication like the non-steroid anti-inflammatory medicine that is going to alleviate pain due to trauma or swollen parts of the body. Like your forearm can be swollen after too much stress, so you can use that. Yes, I recommend warming up before tapping and after. After is also very important. It's like during any type of exercise. the way to the way to warm up your forearm muscles depends on the way they come. So knowing that there is muscles on the anterior part of the forearm and some others on the back, you can use this type of stretching that is going to extend all the muscles in the anterior part, generating the relaxation and complete stretching of them, to allow them to get into a more natural position, stretching them to make it less stressed. And for the back part, you can work with the typical this is more used like for deltoids and triceps, but if you extend it to your forearm and your hand, this is going to help with the extensor muscles. Okay, so this is going to work, this type of warming up, of stretching. You can also extend it to behind your back to make it a more comfortable position, given that you usually do this for sports, so maybe you're related to this type of stretching. You try to do it with your whole extremity to help it stretch your posterior muscles. So that is the main thing you have to do for stretching, just anterior muscles, posterior muscles, and there is not much things to add there for the warm-up, unless you like to warm up also your back and whatever, because you're going to have probably an uncomfortable position as you always play in a certain position that is not comfortable, but that is additional. Okay, so yeah, I advise to do the warm-ups. And now, I've also told you before in the Discord that there tends to be a problem with flipping or tapping when you are like putting on too much effort and you start sweating. But it's really good to have a towel near you, because if you have a towel, I place it usually over my leg so that it is close to the controller. In that way, when I feel like I'm starting to get sweaty and my buttons start slipping, well, I just have to take a little like place my hand for a short time over the towel, or just move it over the towel to get it dry again and get back to the controller. So I tend to do that. I tap, I start feeling like I'm sweating way too much, get my hand over the controller, over the towel, and get back to the controller. That helps me a lot to avoid slipping and pressing buttons when I don't want to. And when I forget to get my towel and put it near me, well, I mess up with certain positionings. Okay, so now that's the physical, anatomical, and medical stuff and the grips you have to have in mind in order to tap. But when it comes to the strategy behind the tapping, it's going to be something a little bit different. Okay, so let me see, are you all listening my voice and everything all right? I hope you are. Now I'm going to show you how you have to think when you're tapping. I'm going to use level 15 for this so that the taps are worthy, because if you play like level 0 tapping, tap is not only not needed but not optimal actually. So I'm going to show you how to tap through level 15, and I advise you start tapping on level 15, not on level 0, because you're not going to get used to the speeds and you're going to tap very wrong. So if you're able to handle level 18 with that, level 15 with that, try to start tapping level 15. That is a better level to start at. So let's begin with our practice session. So here we go. Level 15, I'm going to show you. I go with my grip, you cannot see it, but you can imagine it. This is the Joseph grip, getting into the thigh and placing my hand near the towel. Let me show you quickly how I had it set up. Here goes the controller, here on the thigh, here's the towel of the thigh, here's going to go my hand over the controller. If I get my hand sweaty, go back to the towel, go back to the controller, right? That is going to be the way I use it. And now, if I'm going to go for level 15, but basically you can build as well as you did with your DAS, but you start to think differently. Why? Because you can start getting things to the left. This, you can start getting it to the left easier. The long bars, everything, you can start tapping to the left in such a way you actually never thought you could. So you can start sending things to the left as you would like to do with DAS always, but DAS tends to limit sometimes your height. So with this, you know, now you can take things the whole way to the left. So if you need to take those long bars to the left, you can do it whenever you can, because your tap is going to allow it. So when you feel like you need to get whatever to the left, do it. You can go ahead and do it. I like this type of stacking, which is the very conservative, how would I call it, like downward stacking, where my left is way too high and my right side is not as high as my left, because this is going to be safer. This allows me to create a double well at the right side to be able to manage it better. So sometimes your stack gets a little bit out of control, but still, as you can tap, you can shove your pieces in hopefully accommodating positions, but also you're going to give yourself the extra minutes of life you will not have when you're playing DAS. So that's why, for example, I can cover my well even if I am high enough and try to work my board horizontally. That is the sort of mentality I get myself into when I need to dig, which is cover your well, don't care about how high you are unless you're, of course, the border of top out. Like since the 12, 13 high, you can cover your well with a lot of confidence, because you can get back to it later and you can start fixing your stack horizontally. That is the way I think when I stack, that if I get in trouble, don't worry, you can close the well and start to picture your whole board horizontally from the place you did your well covering to the left, like to see where are the holes and how can I access them. With DAS, sometimes you cannot do that. You have to do something like create awkward positions and place whatever comes and fits there. That is not going to be needed with tap, since you can actually work it. So I hope like some of you DAS players can identify to what I'm saying when I talk about covering the well. When you feel you're getting high, you're not actually high like for a Hypertap player, but you might feel you're getting high, so you have to go super safe and burn down. That doesn't happen with tap, because with tap you can just keep on building over what you have or cover it well and approach your stack differently. No, I shouldn't be pressing down, but the fact that the tap allows me to get so high also allows me to play on higher levels way too comfortably. So you can see I can shove things to the right, to the left, sorry. Oh, that was a 2 Hz hang, but I can get something over with no problem at all. And now that I have a hole there, I can do this, what I told you was playing your stack horizontally. I'm trying to approach that hole without placing anything over it, so I'm playing with my board horizontally, not vertically, as you tend to do when you're going for Tetris, which is start stacking upwards. When you're digging, the best way is to stack sideways. Okay? Yeah, that's a 2 hertz tap, but a 30 hertz resolving. So yeah, that's going to happen sometimes when you're not used to doing the spins. You're not used to spinning. You might mess up 1-2 spins, but still you can get your way around it and learn how to spin properly. Also, you might have a lot of spinning problems like I tend to do, but in the end I always find a way to fix it because I am used to having to fix those type of things. Shouldn't be like the like the usual way, but it happens, so I have to be aware of that and try to fix it when I can. Okay. What else? Well, as levels get higher, you can also see like your tapping ability is more efficient, like more useful. Like you can do a lot of things that you never thought you could do before. Like when I play level 19, I can do it really high, and when I practice level 29, the level 19 ends up being like so disrespected by my brain that I can play even higher. And yeah, just the fact that I can say that you can play level 29 is great, because you can surpass the minimal hertz constantly that you can use to play level 29. That is about 13 or 14 hertz. You can go over that. You're going to be able to handle level 29. So for level 19, as you start practicing your tapping, you're going to see that level 19 is no longer an enemy, you know, because sometimes it is an enemy for new players. They start seeing like level 19 is my kill screen. I reach level 19 and I don't know what I have to do. But when you start playing with a confident tap, you start realizing that it's not a problem. I wanted to pass on a couple of Tetris to play a little bit higher, but yeah, I ended up messing up a positioning. But yeah, you can play higher. You can play way higher than a typical DAS player. And that means more efficiency in your level 19 play, which is of course useful if you're going to go for max out. Because if you're efficient on 19, you don't need to burn a lot, like when you try to save yourself from dying. Oh, and something very cool, very useful from the Joseph Saley grip is the fact that you can actually quick tap with it. That is called Hyper Quick Tap by Joseph, and that Hyper Quick Tap is just incredible because it adds the hertz that you never thought you needed with Hypertap. The Hyper Quick Tap adds them to the mix, so you can get like even faster than the fastest players. The Hyper Quick Tap, I do it the following way. With the Joseph Saley grip, I Hyper Tap with the left thumb, with the right thumb, sorry. Hope you can see it vibrate a little bit. There is vibrating, it is vibrating there. So you go vibrating to one side, and when you are one frame away from your goal, you go pa and tap with the left thumb. Okay, you go tap 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 tap, and the other left thumb is going to help. Also works for the other side. You're going tap 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 and quick tap. That is going to be the hyper quick taps, and those happen to me quite very often when I'm playing 19, because I tend to get high, or also when I was playing 19.4, when I was able to complete it, it was using a lot of hyper quick taps, because at the beginning the 19.4 is very hard to get even with a fast hyper tap, and now it seems pretty easy to drop the 19.4 down. Not necessarily to burn the whole 25 lines, because sometimes a misdrop kills you completely, but it is easier to get down. And when I've done my 19.5 attempts, it has been crucial to be able to get pieces where they are otherwise impossible. Even though it won't get you like above the superhuman level, because that is not possible, you can optimize your human capabilities. And that is where I am standing right now, like very efficient and optimal tapping, hyper tapping, hyper quick tapping. But what I need still is a little bit better handling of the stacking, and I must be able to get my max out eventually. That is what has prevented me from getting max out, not the tapping or my or taking care of my health or like my velocity, or whatever. In the technical aspect is not that, or the physical aspect is not that. It's more like the IQ that goes behind playing better pre-transition and allowing myself to go further into transition and not being nervous about good transitions. So that is the major absent you have to do as a player. Even if you're a tapper or DAS player, you're able to overcome those things that prevent you from progressing. So you to make it better. So if you learn the physical and technical part, there's going to be a big step to go forward into what comes next. That is getting better in the IQ part and become hopefully one day one of the best Latam players. You want to keep playing with DAS like Pepe, whose DAS is like as good or even better than average tappers, where you can go with it and you are going to be more than fine. But if you want to get on tapping because it's the current meta, go ahead. If it gets banned, the fact that you use the Joseph Seligood is going to allow you to become a DAS player way easier. And when you start DASing again, it might be way helpful than if you use a vertical grip that is going to mess up a little bit of your button pressing stuff. So this is sort of the masterclass in tapping for a non-max outer, from a non-max outer, and also not an expert tapper. I'm just teaching you what I've learned from my own experience and from my medical knowledge. Any questions? If you have any questions, you can leave them on the chat. I will very kindly answer to them, or not criticize or try to hurt your feelings or anything. Any question is very welcome. Thank you, Jaco. Gracias, cochinito. Con gusto, hats. You're welcome. The cochinito. Course, Mystic Traveler. If you do the keyboard tapping, regarding keyboard tapping, I don't have much knowledge in my own experience, but it works the same in terms of taking care of yourself, of your muscle work. That physical aspect goes exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the grip section that we discussed. Your grip is going to be closely resembling the mark grip and the vertical grip, where you use your index finger and also maybe No, when you tap on keyboard, you tend to go just with the index finger. So it's almost the same that we've been talking about. The only thing is that it's more comfortable, so that's why it is easier to tap on keyboard. It's way more comfortable. Yeah, pretty much. It comes on taking care of your positioning, your grip, and in the end, the vibrating part, where you can barely see my hand move, but there it is tapping, and it's tapping fast. When you do the calculation of how fast you tap, it is not only needed to be fast, because fast tapping is not necessarily the best tapping. For example, Brendan calls himself a slow tapper, yet he's like 13 Hz, and those 13 Hz are more than enough to be a constant max outer 1.2 player, CTWC player. Eric and Mark can be 30 Hz tappers, but they're also going to have bad games, so it won't come always to the speed. I'm also very fast, but that doesn't mean that I'm a fairly good tapper. I need to get more elements into my game to be able to perform better. So that is an additional thing you have to get. Not only being fast, the speed is not the main thing, even though you need at least 13 Hz to be happy with your tapping. But what comes next is being able to perform. If you tap with your wrist, you're going to do this, right? And that not only requires a bigger arc of movement that is going to make your tapping way slower, but also that is going to put a lot of pressure on your carpal tunnel and on your extensor tunnel. And those structures are going to be the major causes of workplace related injuries, and that is not something you want to do while gaming. So the arm related tapping is what I taught you, that your fingers are going to work just as sticks, like poking, literally poking the controller. Yeah, I'm going to tell you how. So you're going to use, for example, for the Joseph Sailor grip, your thumb as a stick. It's just going to be a stick that is going to poke the button. It's not going to do anything else. I'm going to show you here so you can see better. So what I'm doing with my forearm, the job the forearm is doing is just pushing. That is what my forearm is going to do. So if I vibrate, I'm going to do this movement. It doesn't show quite, but I'm doing this. You can even hear it. And it works better if you extend your arm. So try to extend your arm, place your thumb over the controller or the keyboard or whatever, and try to vibrate there with that. So you can feel your forearm here that becomes way too hard. It hardens a lot because it is contracting. And it's contracting in such a way that it sends a lot of messages to your hands as working as sticks that you're going to poke your buttons with. So that is the way you tap. You feel the whole pressure here in your forearm. You're not going to feel it here in your wrist. And the arc of movement is almost none. And if your arc of movement is so low or so close to zero, it means that there is no delay meanwhile you do the movement. So if you do a high arc of movement, like moving with your wrist, that is going to make it slower tapping than if you do with this kind of arc of movement that is minimal, close to zero. So you're straight up vibrating over your controller. If you've tried games like Cookie Clicker, where you grab your mouse like this, but you want to click it faster, so you tend to put your arm like this. When you're doing this to click, you're not using your wrist. You're not using your wrist. You're using your forearm because you're just pushing the button with the whole strength of your arm. You can feel the vibration fully into your hand, but it's being created by your forearm. That is the same thing that when you play, for example, Guitar Flash. If you have ever played Guitar Flash in expert mode, that shows a lot of commands you have to do repeatedly in a very short period of time. So you tend to take your keyboard. Also, you learn to do that tapping movement. Lucas is an expert on Guitar Flash, so he can be a testimony of that. You don't use your wrist, you use your whole arm extended and your fingers as the stick that's going to poke the button. So I invite you to try it and practice it a little bit more. You can practice with your keyboard buttons, stretching your forearm, pressing, for example, an arrow key on your keyboard and trying to just vibrating your whole forearm, trying to make the vibrating action in your finger with your keyboard. Like, for example, let's say you are pointing to the table. You point to the table with an extended arm. You're going to try to vibrate over the table, vibrate your finger. It's almost the same. I'm not using the wrist at all because I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this motion of the wrist. I'm just using my whole forearm to do the vibrating, pressing. So I hope you sort of understand me that part of the motion, and you can try it out, practice it, and if you can't get it to go after various tries, you can tell me later if you don't get the vibration you want, and we can try to get deeper into it, like in a more individual way. So that, okay, what happens? Your thumb. Well, when you vibrate with your forearm, it sort of does. It sort of does if you have this position. That is why the position of your hand is going to be this one with your... Okay. But how do you... like doing this? Because the real objective is not to go like this or like this. None of those are the movements you're looking for. You're looking for this, like poking, going deeper with your finger, trying to push, not moving it at any direction. Surely what you mean is that you're doing this, but that is not the idea, as well as this is not the idea as well. The idea is to put the button in the tip of your finger. If you put it in the complete tip of your finger, you're going to feel the pushes. You're going to feel the pushes when you put the tip of your finger vertically perpendicular to your buttons. Try to put your finger perpendicular to the buttons. That is going to help you to go deeper. You're going to push, not go to the sides or up and down. The idea is to go further with your finger. So try to place the D-pad in the tip of your finger. The tip is going to do the action for you. So try to do it and tell me if you are able to do it. Okay? So somebody else has any issue, any question, anything you want to ask related to the medical part, the grip, the whatever. I'll try to answer your questions if I have the answer. If not, I might look it up. It seems like there is no more questions, so goodbye everyone. Good night if you're in Colombia. Good day if you're anywhere else. Good afternoon, whatever it is. Thank you all for coming around. See you later.